Oh my gosh, I am so excited. This is going to be one of the best forums we've had all year long. This is just an exciting time. I'm turning the reins over this morning to TJ Sullivan, our past president, because he has such a passion for baseball and brought our keynote speaker to us. And so I just have to let TJ share in all the glory this morning. so TJ, it's up to you.
Well, thanks for that. I am a huge baseball fan. Growing up, my idol was Rickey Henderson, and I tried to pattern my game after him. And if you know anything about Rickey Henderson, you know how amusing that would be. But as great as Rickey Henderson was, my grandpa always told me that Satchel Paige was the greatest baseball player who ever played the game. And every report I had to write in grade school was about Satchel Paige. And so it is exciting to have Bob here today. And there is a huge tie-in between commerce and the Negro Leagues. There are a lot of people who gave up a lot of money as baseball owners to keep Blacks out of baseball. And it's a story about economics, and it's a story about forgiveness, and it's a story about working against a lot of values that we don't hold today. And it's good that we remember where we've come from and how far we've come, and that we still have work to do. And so I'm super excited because Bob Kendrick is one of the best storytellers in our country today. And so I'm excited to bring this all to you as part of the Chamber of Commerce. So with that, I'm going to introduce Josh Kay to get us started with our invocation and our flag salute.
Thank you, TJ. Let us stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And let us pray. Living God, we come to you today with gratitude. We give you thanks for this morning. Thanks for life, for your creation, for humanity. We ask for wisdom. We ask for strength and perseverance. For there are many challenges we are facing, and we pray for our leaders and those working to bridge and build humanity together in your kingdom. We pray for the less fortunate and those in need. May all these things come to pass in your name. Amen.
Amen. Awesome. Thanks for that, Josh. As you know, we do our Spirit of Salem at these moments, and we are today going to be recognizing somebody who's actually not with us today. Bob and Anne Sticha. If you've ever come to a Chamber Forum lunch in person, Bob is the distinguished looking gentleman who's there with Anne. They serve as our senior ambassadors, and they are there to welcome you. Bob has got the best handshake and smile combination I have ever seen. And he is, despite being retired, he is always there for us. And so their love for Salem small businesses is only outdone by their love of each other and of Jesus. As Bob always states, I'm too blessed to be depressed. And they're not able to be here today, but we wanted to read some of the words that other folks have written about them, other ambassadors. Bob and Anne are the kindest and gentlest of souls. They are always the most loving and welcoming presence at any chamber event. When you have been acknowledged by them, your heart feels it. We are a better community because of their active, compassionate involvement. That's from Cindy Peck. In the summer of 1971, I opened my picture framing business in Salem. I had just recently joined the Chamber of Commerce and was invited to have a greeters meeting at my business location. When the day arrived for the meeting, we had about 40 business members at our small showroom. After the tour of our business, we moved the social time outside of the front parking lot. A young Bob and Anne Sticha were so gracious to me that day. I think Bob could tell that I was a bit overwhelmed, and he took the initiative to personally introduce me to many of the wonderful business reps in the group. From that time forward, nearly 42 years, Bob and Ann have been dear friends and mentors. We have been together as chamber ambassadors, welcoming greeters, both old and new, to the chamber greeters meetings each week, and volunteering our help with the many exciting events that the chamber has created each year for our community. I am always greeted with a warm hug and smiles from this couple who have the spirit of kindness and genuine interest of others. It is so obvious that wherever they are present, they are loved and appreciated. I am so grateful to be one of those who have the privilege of knowing them. That's from Ruth Graham. Bob and Ann are the two of the most gracious, humble people I have ever had the pleasure to know. They are legendary, and just the mention of their names brings a smile to my face. During the 26 years that we voluntarily served the chamber together, Bob always, and I mean always, had a pleasant smile on his face and kind words on his lips. Bob and Ann have joyful hearts and a desire to serve. They represent the heart and soul of the chamber. And that's from Jerry Stewart. Bob and Ann have been the pillar of stability and encouragement from the moment I joined the chamber. They were always there to greet me with a warm smile and a firm handshake. They give the best compliments and always push me to be a better person and better ambassador. When I grow up, I want to be just like Bob and Ann. And that's from Dr. Andrew Isaacson. Bob and I go back to the 90s, and before there was Bob and Ann. When he and Ann married, she jumped right in and worked alongside Bob to promote the chamber and its members. I visited a greeters meeting soon after I returned to Salem after being gone for 12 years. I wondered if there would be anyone there I knew. Bob rushed up to me after the meeting with that big smile of his, gave me a wonderful hug, and said it made his day. But he had made my day with his welcoming smile. That's Bob in a nutshell. With Ann by his side, it's the best two forever. That's from Barbara McReel. It is the Salem Chamber of Commerce ever had an award for Barnabas, son of encouragement, it would be Bob Sticha. That's from Mike Brickley. I became acquainted with Bob and Ann at the Salem Chamber Greeters Friday meetings. They are warm and personable folks who exude a love for Salem and the business community. It is a pleasure to see their smiling faces, hear their encouraging comments, and witness the caring attitude they bring to the event they attend and for the city in which they live. That's from Sue Wack. I have been a Salem Chamber member for 13 years. Bob and Ann are some of the faces I always look forward to seeing on Friday mornings. They are supportive, creative, welcoming, and friendly to everyone. Their presence creates a sense of stability and warmth. Also, one can always count on seeing these two smiling faces at many ribbon cuttings. They are wonderful examples of commitment to supporting others by sharing yourself and your time. We are blessed to have them as part of our chamber family. That's from Daniel Hamilton. Bob and Ann, you are an inspiration to me as well as others. Your giving heart has not gone unnoticed, and I feel so privileged to know and call you my friend. I miss seeing your bright, smiling faces every Friday morning, and Bob, I especially miss your hugs. Congratulations on winning the Spirit of Salem Award. I couldn't think of a more deserving couple. I love you guys. That's from Amy. I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name. One thing you can always count on is seeing a big smile and outstretched hand from Bob and Anne Sticha when attending greeters and ribbon cuttings. Bob and Ann are true examples of a bright, shining example of what doing business in Salem should feel like. Selfless service and a can-do spirit always on exhibit. Thank you, Bob and Ann, for so many years of your smiling presence. And that's from Devin and Lisa Campbell. While Bob and Ann are unable to join us today, they were simply overwhelmed with gratitude for being recognized by the Salem Chamber. Please keep Bob and Ann in your thoughts and prayers, and we look forward to seeing them at a ribbon cutting, grand reopening, or at a Salem Chamber event in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me salute our May Spirit of Salem Award recipients, Bob and Anne Sticha. There's wild applause in the background, I can tell. With that, I get the honor of introducing our sponsor, representing Sherman Sherman Johnnie and Hoyt is Mark Hoyt. Mark is a great example of somebody who looks forward to giving back to his community. And he is carrying on a long tradition that Sherman Sherman Johnnie and Hoyt has of being excellent in assisting the Salem community where it needs it. They are a leading attorney firm that works with clients who seek assistance, maximizing opportunities, planning and mitigating risks, and solving difficult personal and business issues. When seeking professional advice, clients may expect the firm's first order of business to be listening. After their professional team understands your situation, needs, and objectives, only then will they evaluate and outline strategic options and a path to solutions and resolve. Their business is built on a unique ability to provide clients with responsive, efficient service and cost-effective practical solutions. They were initially established as DeArmond and Young, LLP in 1949. The firm's roots are deep in Salem. Kenneth Sherman Sr. joined the firm in 1953, and his son Ken Sherman Jr. joined in 1974. Only recently retired, Ken Sherman Jr. is a past president of the Salem Chamber. Gina and Johnny joined the Shermans in 1996, and Mark Hoyt, then a seasoned Salem litigator, joined the firm in 2004. Since that year, the firm has been known as Sherman Sherman Johnnie Hoyt. Partner Hoyt represents businesses and individuals in all aspects of complex civil litigation, land development, and construction. He emphasizes construction defect, commercial and business dissolution litigation, and probate disputes. In the development arena, Hoyt seeks to cut through the red tape which too often stands between an opportunity and a completed profitable project. Mark is a past president of the Marion County Bar Association, former board and executive committee member of SEDCOR. Mark's passions for service include serving as president for the Marion Polk Casa, former president of the Abaquah School Foundation Board of Trustees, and former president of Illahee Hills Country Club. He's also beat me several times on the golf course. Mark is also a member of the Salem Chamber's Executive Leadership Council. By the way, he's not unique in beating me on the golf course. That's just something that happens routinely. The attorneys at Sherman Sherman Johnnie Hoyt place high value on the pursuit of legal excellence, personal integrity, and community service. The Salem Chamber appreciates our partnership with the firm and their commitment to serving Salem residents and businesses. Please join me in welcoming our sponsors for today's forum speaker event, Sherman Sherman Johnnie Hoyt, represented by Mark Hoyt.
Thank you, TJ. I'm not sure what there is left to say after that wonderful introduction. Even before TJ was so kind with his words to our firm and I felt a little bit like the person throwing out the ceremonial first pitch at a baseball game. Everybody knows it's part of the process and it's part of the tradition, but you're just in the way of the main event, and nothing has changed in that respect. We are very excited to be involved with today's particular forum because it reflects something that has been not only a part of our community, but a part of our national community for a long time, and that is baseball and the unique role of the Negro Leagues in the history of baseball and our society. Our focus in our work is on solving problems, managing risks, and expanding opportunities. One can't do that if one does not understand one's community. If you don't know the business community in which you work, the social community in which you work, and the fabric of the community in which you are practicing, you can't effectively represent your clients. So for us, being a part of the community is part and parcel of doing our work and doing our job. Ken Sherman set a long time example of that. I think he jokingly said he was a volunteer driving around looking for a meeting at one point in time, and is one of Salem's youngest first citizens and a former president of the chamber, as TJ mentioned. And so we've all kind of tried to follow Ken's lead and stay involved in the community and keep our thumb on what's happening there. And you can't do that unless you're giving back. And to us, that is a significant and important aspect of what we do. We enjoy our work, and we work in all forms of commercial and civil litigation and business representation, estate planning. But really, we are more passionate about our community involvement than even our work. So with that, I want to turn to my honor today, which is to introduce Bob Kendrick. Bob is the president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, and it is the world's only museum dedicated to preserving and celebrating the rich history of African-American baseball and its impact on the social advancement of America. It is a privately funded 501c3. It operates just 2 blocks from the Paseo YMCA, where Andrew Rube Foster established Negro League Baseball in 1920. So it is located not far from its roots. Since that time, it has grown from a tiny one-room office space that it was in 1991 when it opened, to having welcomed more than 2 million visitors and become one of the most important cultural institutions in the world for its work to give voice to a once forgotten chapter of baseball in American history. The museum was received a national designation from the United States Congress, earning the distinction of being America's Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. Bob has been president of the museum since March of 2011. When he was named president, his appointment marked a celebrated return to the museum after a 13-month departure. He became the museum's first director of marketing in 1998. So he's played a significant role in the growth from that one-room office to its current 10,000 square foot space that's hosted more than 2 million visitors. So we all owe a debt of thanks to him for his hard work on behalf of that museum. He was named the vice president of marketing in 2009, and then accepted a post as the executive director for the National Sports Center for the Disabled in Kansas City, Missouri in 2010. After that, he returned to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. In his role there, he is responsible for the museum's day-to-day operations and development and implementation of strategies to advance the mission of the 501c3 not-for-profit organization. Since rejoining the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in 2011, he helped orchestrate more than $10 million turnaround that has helped the museum regain its vitality and financial stability. He began his association with the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum as a volunteer during his 10-year newspaper career with the Kansas City Star. As a senior copywriter for the Star's promotions department, he won, or was part of a creative team that won, numerous local and regional advertising and marketing awards. He developed the advertising concept and campaign that helped attract more than 10,000 people in less than 30 days to see the debut of the museum's first traveling exhibit in the summer of 1993. Remember, that's only 2 years after it was a one-room office. So that gives you some idea of just how powerful his ideas and execution are. And as soon as he starts talking, you're going to understand why and how he was able to do that. The success of that promotion led to the appointment to the museum's board of directors in the fall of 1993. In his nearly 5 years on the museum's board, Kendrick served as the secretary-treasurer and chaired the membership and event planning committees. He was co-chairman of the museum's grand opening gala celebration that attracted nearly 2,000 people to Bartle Hall in November of 1997. That event raised more than $500,000 in support of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. Kendrick has been responsible for the creation of several signature museum educational programs and events, including the Hall of Fame game, which annually honors Major League Baseball greats who played in the game in the spirit and signature style of the Negro Leagues. While he doesn't fashion himself a historian, Kendrick has become one of the leading authorities on the topic of Negro Leagues baseball history and its connection to issues related to sports, race, and diversity. He has been a contributing writer for Ebony Magazine and the National Urban League's Opportunity Magazine. In 2006, the Greater Kansas City Black Chamber of Commerce awarded the Mary Leona Diversity Award, and he was named Citizen of the Year by the Omicron Xi chapter of Omega Phi fraternity. Can you tell I was not a Greek? I probably got that all wrong. In 2009, the Kansas City Globe named Kendrick to the paper's list of 100 most influential African Americans in Greater Kansas City. In January of 2014, Kendrick was inducted into the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. A native of Crawfordville, Georgia, Kendrick received a basketball, you played the wrong sport, you know that, Bob. A basketball scholarship to attend Park College in Parkville, Missouri in 1980, and earned a BA degree in communications arts in 1985. Mr. Kendrick's new podcast, Black Diamonds, is can't miss content on Sirius XM. And I think he was telling us earlier that they're now number 5 in all sports podcasts, which for a brand new series is pretty darn impressive. So you'll understand why in a few minutes. So with that, please help us welcome our distinguished keynote speaker, Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum.
Mark, thank you so much, man. And thanks to all of you at the Chamber for inviting me to speak today to the group. Anytime that we get this opportunity to talk a little bit about the history of the Negro Leagues. It is a welcomed opportunity. And certainly as we look at, while it wasn't substantial Black baseball history, the great Northwest certainly does have its share of Black baseball history. And I'm so excited that over in Portland, they are reviving the old Portland Rosebuds as a minor league team and taking on that name. Here in Kansas City, we just rebranded the minor league team here, formerly the Kansas City T-Bones, and they will start playing next week. May 18th is the home opener as the new Kansas City Monarchs. And so we are super excited about this resurgence in interest in the Negro Leagues. Matter of fact, it was Jesse Owens who had tried to establish a team there in Portland, the Portland Rosebuds. And it didn't last very long, but it was there. And it makes that area certainly a part of the rich history of Black baseball that touched so many communities across the country. Now, Emmanuel is helping me, so I'm going to attempt to share this screen and walk through a series of slides. I was telling the guys before we started, you know, you would think as many Zoom calls as I've done since this pandemic struck that I'd be better at this than I really am, but honestly, I'm not. I haven't gotten any better at it, but we're going to try. And oh, there it is. I think we got it. All right. Hopefully everybody can see that. And so we know who that old dude is, and so we'll keep moving here. And Mark did a wonderful introduction to what this museum is all about. And as he mentioned, we started in a little one-room office about a fraction of the size of my office. And guys like the late, great Buck O'Neill and other local Negro Leaguers who were still with us at that time. Sad to say, all the guys who called Kansas City home when we started this museum, they've all passed on. They literally took turns paying the monthly rent to keep that little office open. And of course, with it, our hopes and dreams of one day building a facility that would pay rightful tribute to not only one of the greatest chapters in baseball history, but what now thousands of visitors discover each and every year, one of the most amazing chapters in American history. And that is the rich and compelling and powerful story of the Negro Leagues. And that story's origins began here. I'll never forget. As Mark mentioned, I started as a volunteer and I was working at the Kansas City Star. And so we were putting together this traveling exhibition. And so I came down to visit the former executive director, Don Motley, who has now passed on. And I remember going into his office and I asked him, I said, well, I'm looking for the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. He said, son, you're standing in it. And it was just this little office with a few pictures on the wall. And to see how this organization has grown leaps and bounds since that time is still something that is short of amazing. There's a wonderful passage when you walk into the Negro Leagues Museum. And this is taken from the Roman Catholic Bible, Ecclesiastes. And it simply says, my son, if you aspire to be a servant of the Lord, prepare yourself for testing, set a straight course and keep to it, and do not be dismayed in the face of adversity. That was Negro Leagues baseball in a nutshell. You see, these athletes love the game of baseball so much that they were willing to endure whatever social adversity confronted them as they traveled the highways and byways of this country just to play baseball. Their passion would not only change our game, but more importantly, folks, it would change our country for the better. And that's the story that we proudly document and substantiate here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And so at the crux of this story is about pride and passion and perseverance, determination, courage, resiliency. And I share the resilient spirit because as we look at this slide, this was from February of last year. As a matter of fact, February 13th of 2020. And we were commemorating the 100th anniversary of the birth of the Negro Leagues. And we had planned this year-long celebration that was going to jumpstart a substantial fundraising campaign for the museum. And at long last create an endowment and generate funds for programs and collection and other aspects of operations. So as you can well imagine, there was a lot riding on this 100th anniversary celebration. And so the leagues were formed here in Kansas City on February 13th, 1920. So 100 years to the date that they were formed, we go back into the very building, the Purcell YMCA. And as you can see in this photograph, I've got an all-star roster of distinguished guests that joined me to help commemorate this. On the slide, as you're looking to my left, there's Commissioner Rob Manfred. And right next to me on my right is the Honorable Mayor, Commissioner of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred, and the Mayor of the great city of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas. Over to the far left, that gentleman to the very far left of me, that's Xavier James, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Major League Baseball's Player Association. Standing next to Mayor Lucas is the great Frank White, 8-time Gold Glove winner, is a member of the Kansas City Royals Hall of Fame, and now Jackson County executive. Standing behind the young lady in the red plaid jacket is the Honorable Lieutenant Governor of the state of Missouri, Mike Kehoe, City Councilman Jermaine Reed on the far right, and then standing next to Commissioner Manfred is the new owner of the Kansas City Royals, John Sherman. So man, I went out and got an all-star roster of its distinguished guests, and we there to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the birth of the Negro Leagues and jumpstart this celebration. We're off and running. Major League Baseball and the Players Association announced a joint $1 million contribution. We roll out these plans for the year-long celebration. We're rolling off to a flying start. And then less than 30 days later, everything came to a screeching halt, just like that, in the form of a coronavirus pandemic. Man, I had no idea what coronavirus was. And all I know was that it was causing a lot of devastation. And we shut down our museum on March 14th. We reopened it June 16th, 3 months later. And all of a sudden, all of these plans that we had were falling by the wayside, particularly all of the group gathering plans. And so we had spent over a year in putting this game plan together, and now it's time to execute, and we can't execute. And I've oftentimes said that as a steward of this story, you cannot wallow in self-pity. Oh, it would be doing a complete disservice to all of those who call the Negro Leagues home, because they never cried about the social injustice. They went out and did something about it. You won't let me play with you in the major leagues? Okay, I'll just create a league of my own. So you cannot wallow in self-pity. But y'all, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you I was doing a little wallowing, because we were so dependent on this being that jump off part to create this long needed endowment. We started this museum in as non-traditional fashion as you could ever imagine. That little one-room office, no seat money. As I like to say, we started the museum with a hope and a prayer. And we've been able to navigate the economic landscape and build this great museum that, as Mark mentioned, is now designated as America's National Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. But this was going to be that thing that led us to creating the resources that were necessary for the museum to operate into perpetuity. And we were watching this all fall by the wayside. So yeah, there was a little bit of wallowing going on. And for me, I use a terrible baseball analogy for coronavirus. For you guys who are baseball fans, coronavirus was that big, nasty right-hander who threw one high and tight and knocked you down. And you got to get back up, dust yourself off, get back in the batter's box, and try to figure out how you're going to hit that sucker. And so eventually I stopped wallowing, and you started to kind of figure out, okay, how can you make a way when there seemingly is no way? And one of the first things that we did, we had initially planned to do a tip your cap to the Negro League salute as part of a national day of recognition with Major League Baseball. First time ever that all 30 Major League teams on a single day were going to honor the Negro Leagues. And we were going to have a ceremony where players and fans were going to tip their cap in all 30 stadiums. Well, with all 30 clubs operating on that day. It was going to be May 27th of last year. And as you all know, there's nothing more honorable that a ball player can do than to tip his cap. You know, that is the ultimate show of respect. So as excited as I was about the $1 million contribution, I was just as excited about the fact that we had gotten Major League Baseball to do this National Day of Recognition. Well, as June 27th was approaching, it was very clear that Major League Baseball wasn't going to be playing on June 27th. As a matter of fact, they were in contentious negotiations, baseball and the Players Association, on if and when they were going to bring baseball back. So about a week before that game was going to take place, I reached out to my good friend, Joe Posnanski. I had this idea. And Joe is a great writer. I don't know if you've read any of his works, but he wrote a book on the legendary Buck O'Neil called The Soul of Baseball, A Road Trip Through Buck O'Neil's America. If you haven't read it, you absolutely owe yourself to get this book and read it because it is amazing. It was the 2008 Casey Award winner as the best baseball book in the country. But to be honest, it's not a baseball book. It is more a book of loving and living through the eyes of the legendary Buck O'Neil. And so Joe is my brother. And while we're not biologically brothers, he is my brother. And I reached out to Joe and I said, Joe, I got this idea. And typically when I have bad ideas, I vet them with Joe. And I said, Joe, what do you think about an idea to see if we could do a virtual tip your cap to the Negro Leagues? See if we might be able to get a few dignitaries, current, former Major League players to tip their cap. Now, I'm waiting on him to tell me, Bob, you crazy. That's a terrible idea. You know, we don't have time to do that. He didn't say that. He thought it was a great idea. And then he called his business partner, a guy named Dan McGinn. And Dan is a tremendous communication strategist out of the DC area. And we vetted it with Dan, and he thought it was a great idea. And on June 29th of last year, we rolled out this campaign called Tip Your Cap to the Negro Leagues, as you can see on the slide, with 4 US presidents tipping their cap. President Obama, President Bush, President Clinton, and President Jimmy Carter. Legendary other dignitaries like General Colin Powell. Groundbreaking athletes, as you can see, with Michael Jordan and Billie Jean King, Magic Johnson, Stephen Colbert, Conan O'Brien, Bob Costas, the Temptations of Motown fame. The list just went on and on. But guys, when we literally went into outer space and got a tip of the cap from astronaut Chris Cassidy, who was aboard the International Space Station, I knew then that we had done something pretty doggone special. And all of a sudden, the level of engagement around this museum and the 100th anniversary started to build, and it was growing rapidly, and people were identifying with what this history represented. And this campaign literally went viral. And we went from doom and gloom to, believe it or not, having one of the greatest years financially in recent museum history. And while we couldn't do the group gathering things that we had hoped to do, just this past February 13th again, we just launched Negro Leagues 101. And yes, it celebrates the 101st anniversary of the birth of the Negro Leagues as a continuation to the centennial celebration, but it also was the launch of a significant educational initiative in the spirit and vein of a 101 introductory to the Negro Leagues, as if you were taking a 101 college course. And so we're working on that, which will actually include a college course that is an introduction to the Negro Leagues. But this 101 will also take on all of our educational programs targeted at all levels of learning. So this story is about resiliency, and we had to embody that spirit. And I guess now about 6 weeks ago, we turned the museum into a COVID vaccination clinic. As a matter of fact, we held our clinic on March 15th of this year with a local grocery partner here, and they have a pharmacy and they had access to the vaccine. And it struck me that nearly a year from the date that we had shut the museum down, here we were now fighting back. And I felt this level of vindication, because again, we had been bullied by this virus, and now we were fighting back. And we vaccinated over 2,000 people here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, many of them who would not have had a chance to get to other areas in the Kansas City community to go get this life-saving vaccine. And to do it in the cultural confines of this museum, because within the African American community, there is still a lot of distrust with the medical profession. And this goes back to years and years of distrust. And so to do this in the cultural confines of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, I think it helped kind of squelch some of the fears that folks were having about trusting whether or not they should take this vaccine. And we are tremendously proud of what we were able to do, because I think it was one of the most significant things that we've ever done, because this was literally a life-saving measure, and it has everything to do with the spirit of what the Negro Leagues represented off the field. But as we start to examine the Negro Leagues themselves, it was all started by this guy, Andrew Root Foster, known as the father of the Negro Leagues. It would be Root Foster who would lead a contingent of 8 independent Black baseball team owners into Kansas City. They would meet at the Paseo YMCA, as Mark mentioned, and out of that meeting came the birth of the Negro National League, the first successful organized Black baseball league. Folks, the Negro Leagues would go on to operate remarkably for 40 years, from 1920 until 1960. Now, mind you, Jackie Robinson breaks baseball's color barrier in 1947. 13 years after Jackie breaks the color barrier, the Negro Leagues finally ceased operations, because by then the best young Black stars had moved into the major leagues or into the major leagues minor league system, and there was no replenishing system. See, but it took 12 years before every major league team had at least one Black baseball player. The Boston Red Sox would become the last team to integrate in 1959 when they signed a player by the name of Elijah Pumpsie Green. And so that is what afforded the Negro Leagues an opportunity to continue to do business for as long as it did. And Root Foster was an absolute genius. Root Foster had been a great pitcher in the early era of Black baseball. As a matter of fact, he is credited with having invented what we now know to be the screwball. Back then, it was called a fadeaway, and old Rube perfected this pitch. So much so that the great major league manager, John McGraw, would sneak Rube Foster into his camp so that Rube could teach Christy Matheson how to throw the screwball. And well, Christy Matheson threw the pitch all the way into the National Baseball Hall of Fame that he learned from Rube Foster. But Foster was best known as this visionary, this tremendous leader. He would organize the Negro Leagues. He would become president of the Negro Leagues. He owned the Chicago American Giants, and he managed the Chicago American Giants. And folks, as a manager, Rube Foster was known to fine his ball players in the early 1900s as much as $5 if you were tagged out standing up. You were supposed to slide. Rube would draw a circle down the first base line and a circle down the third base line. And if every one of his players couldn't drop a bunt inside that circle, Rube would fine them. He was adamant about the style of play that became signature in Negro Leagues baseball. Fast, aggressive, daring. They bunt their way on. They steal second. And man, if you were to respond, they were still in third and they were still home. And that drew, believe it or not, Black and white fans who sat side by side during an era when doing something socially together was virtually unheard of. Negro Leagues baseball brought the two races together. You see, that's the irony of this great story. A league born out of segregation would become the driving force for social change in this country. This is the great J.L. Wilkinson, James Leslie Wilkinson, J.L. or Wilkie as he was affectionately known. Wilkie was the only white owner of the original 8 teams established in 1920 to start the Negro National League. He owned the great Kansas City Monarchs. Yeah, and initially Rube Foster was resistant. He did not want any white ownership, but he kept hearing these great things about this dude named J.L. Wilkinson. To put it in perspective, the legendary Buck O'Neill would say of Wilkie that he was the first white man he had ever met without any prejudice. When there weren't enough hotel rooms to go around, they slept in the same bed together. Wilkie treated his players with the utmost in respect and class and dignity. And as a result, his players absolutely adored him. And Wilkie also had what Foster needed, and that was access to stadiums. So Rube would relent. Wilkie would bring in his Kansas City Monarchs. The Kansas City Monarchs would become one of the greatest baseball franchises, not in Black baseball history, but in baseball history. One losing season in their almost 40-year existence in the Negro Leagues. They sent more players to the major leagues than any other Negro League franchise. They were a model franchise. There are those who will say that the Kansas City Monarchs were the New York Yankees of the Negro Leagues. There are others who will say that the New York Yankees were the Kansas City Monarchs of the major leagues. They were that consistently good. J.L. Wilkinson would rightfully take his place in the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 2006. And when we look at the game-changing aspects of the Negro Leagues, this surprises people. You know, advents such as the batting helmet, shin guards, plays like the hit and run, bunt and run. This all started in the Negro Leagues. But the most notable of those game changers, night baseball. It would be J.L. Wilkinson who would pioneer night baseball in the Negro Leagues 5 years before they ever played a night game in the major leagues. They were playing them in the Negro Leagues. Yeah, Major League Baseball, the history book says that the first professional night baseball game, 1935, Crossley Field, Cincinnati, Ohio, Cincinnati Reds versus Philadelphia Phillies. Well, the history book is wrong. The first professional night baseball game, 1930, and it featured our very own Kansas City Monarchs. Wilkie literally mortgaged everything he had to pioneer night baseball, portable generated light towers. So not only could they play a night game here, they could load them up on the truck and play a night game virtually anywhere. Truth of the matter is, by the time they play that game in Cincinnati, the Monarchs and a team called the House of David had taken night baseball all the way out to the great Northwest, to Seattle. They had taken night baseball all the way out to Seattle by the time they played that game. And Wilkie wasn't doing this to be innovative. He was doing it for survival. You see, back then, the Negro Leagues were primarily relegated to playing on Sundays. Major League Baseball really didn't play on Sundays. So the Negro Leagues would rent the ballpark, play that Sunday doubleheader. Well, we left church, going straight to the ballpark, dressed to the nines, as they would say, looking good. And so Wilkie was trying to get the working class fan into the ballpark. Night baseball became the answer. Night baseball became even more popular than Sunday games. And folks, Sunday games were so popular that Black churches would move their service time up an hour. Now, if you know anything about the Black church, you don't mess with service time. 11 o'clock Sunday go to meeting. Well, when the Monarchs were home, service started at 10 o'clock and everybody filed out going to that Sunday doubleheader. Night baseball was even bigger than that. And then we started to introduce you to some of the legendary players who you should know, and maybe you don't know, but you absolutely should know. One of them, the great Josh Gibson. who many will call the Black Babe Ruth. But there are others who saw Gibson swing that big bat, who would call Ruth the white Josh Gibson. Gibson, folks, was incredible. In 1936, against all level of competition, the great power hitting catcher hit 84 home runs in a single season. He had strings of 75, 71, and 69 in single seasons. He is still believed to be the only man to ever hit a ball completely out of Yankee Stadium. He hit one in the Polo Grounds that they estimated to travel over 600 feet. And as I share with my visitors, his steroids were ham hocks and collard greens. The man was just country strong, as we say from Georgia. He could hit that ball and he hit it with a lot of power. But Josh wasn't just a great power hitter. Josh Gibson was a great hitter. Lifetime batting average of 354. And in head-to-head competition against major leaguers in countless exhibition games, hit over 420. But what makes it even more remarkable, particularly if you're a fan of the game, he was doing this as a catcher. Catchers don't do that. No. You get one or the other, power or average, but rarely do you get that combination of the two because the position is just so physically demanding. It beats your body up. Well, Josh wasn't a good catcher. He was a great catcher, rifle arm. He's throwing guys out from the crouch in that era. The late, great Buck O'Neil said he had complete control of his pitching staff. So he called a great game and was a good running catcher. Josh gonna steal you 20, 25 bases or more to go with that big bat of his. And as you can see in the picture, when I say big bat, I mean big bat. 40-ounce, 41 inches. Yeah, you got to be a man to swing that kind of lumber. Gibson dies tragically at age 35. Ironically, the same year that Jackie Robinson breaks baseball's color barrier. Josh dies January 20th of 1947, literally just a few months before Jackie breaks the color barrier. Josh Gibson would have hit home runs in any league in any era had he been given the opportunity to do so. One of my favorite players hails from Cuba. This is the great Martin de Higo. Nicknamed him El Maestro, the master, because he could do it all. Played all 9 positions, played all 9 of them well. Folks, he is the only baseball player in the history of our sport to be enshrined into 5 different countries' baseball halls of fame. He's in the Mexican, Cuban, Venezuelan, Dominican, and in Cooperstown. 1 year in the Mexican League, de Higo wins the pitching title. He goes 19-2 with an 0.90 ERA. The sucker hits .387 that same season and won the batting title. That makes no sense. You cannot come out of Cuba and not know the name Martin de Higo. But to the chagrin of so many, they come here to the Negro Leagues Museum, and it's the first time they've ever heard of El Maestro, the great Martin de Higo. And of course, I think the greatest nickname in baseball history belongs to this dude. That is the legendary James Thomas Cool Papa Bell. Cool Papa is still believed to be the fastest man to ever play this game. Clocked him in an amazing 12 seconds, circling the bases from home to home. Of course, his good friend Satchel Paige would say of Cool that he was so fast he could walk in a room, turn off the lights, get in bed, pull up the covers before the room went dark. But and that's actually a true story. But I tell my folks and my guests here all the time, you don't have to fictionalize the speed of Cool Papa. Cool Papa once stole 175 bases in a less than 200 game season. He twice, honest to God's truth, twice scored from first base on a bunt in exhibition games against Major League All-Stars. They were playing in Mexico, and the legendary Buck O'Neil says Cool went from first to third so fast on a single that the Mexican team stopped the game in protest because there was no way that a man could get around the bases that fast. How fast was Cool Papa Bell? The legendary Jesse Owens, who at that time was the fastest man in the world, would never race Cool Papa Bell. I think I saw someone with a hand up. Does someone have a question for me? Okay, I'll keep.
I think it was Kathy laughing. I think she did one of those laughing.
And then there is the legendary Leroy Satchel Paige. And what you'll notice is there were great nicknames in the Negro Leagues. And when your nickname is so iconic that when I tell people James Bell, people say who? If I tell people Leroy Paige, they say who? But when you say Cool Papa and when you say Satchel, virtually everybody's heard those names. And Satchel Paige was arguably the greatest pitcher this sport has ever seen. We know for certain the oldest rookie in the history of Major League Baseball. Now, Major League Baseball says that Satchel was 42 years old when he finally got his opportunity to pitch for the Cleveland Indians in 1948 as a rookie. Some of you may recall Cleveland would win the World Series in 1948. And my Cleveland Indian fans get tired of hearing me say this. It was the last time Cleveland won the World Series was 1948 with Satchel Paige and the great Larry Doby. Well, many thought Satchel should have been named Rookie of the Year. He didn't get called up until July of that year, and he goes 6-1 with a 2.4 ERA his rookie season at age 42, which means he was likely closer to 52, because most who knew Satchel believed that he was at least 10 years older than what he claimed to be. Now, Major League Baseball says Satchel was born July 7, 1906, which I absolutely do not believe. The man that died here in 1982, man, he had seen 76 a long time ago. Satchel was likely born into the early to mid 1890s in Mobile, Alabama. And like most of that era, nobody's born in a hospital. Everybody's born at home to a midwife. And so that birth record was kept in the back page of the family Bible. And according to Satchel, the goat ate that page out the Bible. So he didn't know. And as Satchel would whimsically pose the question, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? Or that age is simply mind over matter. If you don't mind, it don't matter. And that is how he led his life. And guys, in his prime, they clocked his fastball at 105 miles per hour. But what really made Satchel special, and I can tell you right now, 105 is pretty doggone special. But what really made Satchel special was 105 with pinpoint control. He could put it exactly where he wanted to put it. And I'm not talking about just throwing strikes. The catcher set the target, he hit the target. He didn't warm up in the bullpen like most pitchers do, throw it to the catcher across home plate. You know what Satchel would use? A stick of foil chewing gum wrapper. Honest God's truth. The catcher would sit that chewing gum wrapper on top of home plate. And wherever the catcher moved that chewing gum wrapper, Satchel right over the top of that chewing gum wrapper. Oh, he was uncanny. I tell my guests here all the time, there will never, ever, ever be another Leroy Satchel Paige. Not someone who combines the longevity, by his estimation, pitched in over 2,600 games. The great stuff. Recorded some 55 no-hitters and only God knows how many strikeouts, and the charisma. He could sell it. Yeah, he could sell it, but he could also back it up. And so Satchel had names for his pitches. So he didn't have fastball, curveball, changeup. No, not Satchel. Satchel had what he called his midnight creeper. He had the two-humper. He had the bat dodger. He had the hesitation pitch. He had the long tom, the short tom, the jump ball, the trouble ball, the radio ball, the wobbly ball, the dipsy-do. And he also had a pitch that he called his B-ball. You know why he called it the B-ball? Because Satchel says, it bees where I want it to be when I want it to be there. And so he had everything. Satchel Paige was essentially the Muhammad Ali of baseball before we ever knew who Muhammad Ali was. And if he was alive and doing his thing today in this era of social media, he'd still be the biggest star on the face of the planet. And then, of course, Jackie Robinson. And most of you know the story of Jackie Robinson. It is profound, it is prolific, it in essence jettisoned the beginning of the civil rights movement. But a lot of my visitors are shocked to discover that Jackie Robinson's illustrious professional baseball career began right here in Kansas City in the Negro Leagues with the great Kansas City Monarchs. Jackie plays here in 1945. And I think people think Jackie just walked out of nowhere and started playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers. But his real rookie season was here in 1945. And by the end of the 45 season, he had literally disappeared. His teammates had no idea where he was. And he, of course, had been summoned away to meet Branch Rickey in New York, where Branch Rickey sprang it on him that he would become the chosen one. You see, Rickey had purported to be creating his own Negro Leagues, the United States Baseball League, which I think was a complete hoax. I think Rickey was doing this so that he wouldn't let the other owners know what he was up to trying to integrate the game. And Rickey had also set his mind on raiding the Negro Leagues of his talent without any compensation. Because you'll hear stories that say Branch Rickey signed Jackie Robinson away from the Kansas City Monarchs. No, he didn't. He took Jackie Robinson away from the Kansas City Monarchs. J.L. Wilkinson never got paid a dime for a player who he had under contract. But Wilkinson was stuck between a rock and a hard place because, as we introduced Wilkinson earlier, J.L. Wilkinson was white. There was no way, y'all, that this white man could stand up and protest what every black person in this country had been waiting on to see another black man play, to see a black man play in the major leagues. He was damned if he did and damned if he didn't. That black fan base that had been so loyal to him, if he stands up and protests against this, they would have turned their back on him right away. And so publicly, Wilkie said all the right things. Privately, he was seething. And he wasn't seething because a black man was going to play in the major leagues, but this black man that you're about to take away from me, you're going to put me out of business. And he was absolutely right. J.L. Wilkinson sold his interest in the Monarchs to his business partner, T.Y. Baird, the year after Jackie breaks the color barrier, because there was no if about this. It was simply a matter of when the Negro Leagues were going to die. And the question that is so commonly posed to me was Jackie Robinson the best player in the Negro Leagues? No, he wasn't the best player on his own Kansas City Monarch team. And that's not to disparage Jackie Robinson. It just speaks to the tremendous talent that was there in the Negro League. But he absolutely was the right man to be the first. He had what I like to refer to as the intangibles that better prepared him to deal with the racial hatred that he would be confronted with. He had been a celebrated collegiate, an all-American football player at UCLA. So there was a little cachet surrounding Jackie. He was college educated. He had served in the military. He was disciplined. He would become married to the beautiful Rachel Robinson. He was stable. All those attributes would be called upon to deal with the racial hatred that he would be confronted with. Keep in mind, when Jackie walks out on that field as a member of the Brooklyn Dodgers, he is called everything but, as my mother would say, but a child of God when he walked out there. When he came up to the plate, they knocked him down continuously. As a matter of fact, the opposing team pitchers would oftentimes get fined if they didn't knock him down. When he would slide into second base, he would oftentimes come up wet, where the opposition had spit on it. When the opposition slid into second base, they came up spikes high, trying to cut it. They did everything imaginable to break Jackie, but Jackie would not break. Some of those other Negro Leaguers who had been so acclimated to segregation, they couldn't have handled it. Had you thrown a black cat on the field, say when Willie Wells walked out on the field, his natural instinct would have been pick the black cat up and throw it right back where it came from. And it would have been so easy for the naysayers to say, see, I told you they couldn't handle it. But if Jackie can't play, the naysayers would have said, I told you they weren't good enough to play in this league. So Rickey did indeed have a difficult task of finding the right guy because failure was not an option on either side of the equation. If Jackie can't take the abuse, the experiment is over. If he can't play, the experiment is over. It could have been another 10, 15, 20 years or more before another black man would have gotten the opportunity to play in the major leagues. And if it's 20 years later, think about the great stars we would have missed. We would have missed Willie Mays, who just turned 90 last week. Happy birthday to the Say Hey Kid. We would miss the late, great Henry Aaron. We would have missed Ernie Banks, Roy Campanella, Roberto Clemente, Bob Gibson. Can you imagine our sport without those great stars? And if you can imagine what it was like before 1947, because they didn't learn how to play baseball after 1947. They were playing great baseball well before 1947. And of course, this surprises a lot of people. There were 3 pioneering women who called the Negro Leagues home: Toni Stone, Connie Morgan, and Mamie Peanut Johnson. Pioneers, women who competed with and against the men in the 1950s in the Negro Leagues. Toni Stone was the first female of professional baseball. She was followed by Mamie Peanut Johnson, a 5'3" pitcher with a strong right arm, and then Connie Morgan, a tremendous athlete out of the Philadelphia area, who would compete with and against the men there in the Negro Leagues. And of course, there were also female leaders and executives in the Negro Leagues, most notably Effa Manley. Effa Manley and her husband Abe owned the Newark Eagles, but it was Mrs. Manley who ran the day-to-day operations of that baseball team, and she knew the business of baseball as well as any man. Great talent play for her. My dear friend, the late great Monty Irvin, Larry Doby, Leon Day, Willie Wells, Raleigh Biz Mackey. These are Hall of Famers who all played for Effa Manley's Newark Eagles. The great Don Newcomb should be in the Hall of Fame. All part of the great Effa Manley-led Newark Eagles. So it strikes me that, again, this league born out of segregation would become the driving force for social change in this country. This league born out of exclusion would become perhaps this country's most inclusive entity. They didn't care what color you were, and they didn't care what gender you were. Can you play? Do you have something to offer? And that's the way it's supposed to be. And Toni Stone, folks, would take the roster place of this guy, the legendary Henry Louis Aaron. Yeah, Hank Aaron joined the Indianapolis Clowns in 1952. And that's my favorite picture of the Hammer, standing at the train station in Mobile, Alabama. He's 18 years old. He must have weighed 150 pounds, soaking wet, and he's about to go leave to join the Indianapolis Clowns. At that time, he was a skinny, cross-handed hitting shortstop. And in Hank's case, he was a right-hand hitter who was hitting with his left hand on top. That is unorthodox. The fear is that you break your wrist hitting in that manner. Well, Henry Aaron is knocking the cover off the baseball in a highly unorthodox fashion. When he gets to the Clowns, they put the right hand on top, and the rest, as we say, is history. He was shortly after discovered by the Boston Braves, who would become the Milwaukee Braves, who of course would become the Atlanta Braves. Henry Aaron will go down in this sport as one of its all-time greatest players. He is my favorite Major League Baseball player of all time and my childhood idol as a kid growing up in small town Georgia, Crawfordville, Georgia, all of 500 people, 80 miles away from Atlanta. And that picture, and you can notice the duffel bag that is next to his foot. And he told me, he said, Bob, I may have had 2 changes of clothes in that bag, $1.50 in my pocket, and a ham sandwich that my mama had made me going to go chase that dream. It worked out pretty well for the Hammer. And his passing in January of this year leaves, as you could well imagine, a tremendous void for all of us at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and the Negro Leagues Baseball family. And for this kid from Crawfordville, Georgia, it was really a sad day when we learned of the news of his passing. People like Henry Aaron are just simply not supposed to die. They're just not. And through the work that we take on here, the spirit of Henry Aaron, the legacy of Henry Aaron will live on forever. And then, of course, this leads me to my dear friend, my mentor and my confidant, the late great John Buck O'Neill, the founder of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, legendary Negro League in his own right, and one of the greatest human beings to ever walk the face of this earth. Most of us fell in love with Buck and we never saw him play. We fell in love with the Buck O'Neill who taught us about the heroes of the Negro Leagues. And we fell in love with Buck O'Neill, who so beautifully and vividly demonstrated to all of us that you could indeed get further in this life with love than you could with hate. And it was his driving force to make sure that the players of the Negro Leagues would never be forgotten. And that is what motivated him to want to build a Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And it is in his spirit that I now get to share many of the stories that he shared with me. And I get to share with people like yourselves. And every time that I tell these stories, I feel like it keeps them alive in my mind and in my heart. And we don't ever want these stories to die. And as long as this great museum is here, these stories will live on. We hope that your travels after this pandemic is over will bring you out to Kansas City to experience what I believe, and I'm biased. Let me preface that. I am biased. The best baseball history museum anywhere in the world. And I say that with no disrespect to my friends in Cooperstown, New York, at that hollow hall known as the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Because if you like stuff, that place is filled with stuff. But you see, it's not the stuff that drives this. It is the story. It is a powerful, compelling, inspirational story that had escaped the pages of American history books that drives this museum. And so for virtually everyone who comes here, this is a brand new history. And I can tell you this, people are amazed by what they learn, but they leave a little bit dismayed by the fact that they just now had the opportunity to learn it. Why didn't I know this when I was in school? Well, the answer is simple. American historians did us all a tremendous disservice. They kept this wonderful piece of baseball and Americana away from us. And so now people are getting to relish in this story. And this story is not about the adversity. It's about what they did to overcome the adversity. And folks, that is a story that transcends race, it transcends age, and it transcends gender. And that is our story here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. I think we have a little time for a few questions if anybody has any questions of me, but I certainly want to thank Tom and everybody involved there with the chamber for allowing me to run my mouth a little bit and talk a little bit about the history of the Negro League. So thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you, Bob. That was awesome. I'm so excited that you were able to join us. That's one of the benefits of the pandemic. You really have a gift, and you do Buck O'Neill a great service by every day doing what you are doing, because you have been given a unique talent to tell stories and to make it inspirational. And it does. You are exactly right. The history of the Negro Leagues is one that you can find inspirational no matter who you are. And the story about overcoming and fighting through adversity, yeah, you're 100% right. That story, we have all in business have had a year where we have had to overcome a lot.
Oh yeah.
And you can either feel sorry for yourself or you can fight through it, and the struggle is worth it, regardless of how you come out. But it's even sweeter when you come out on the winning end of things.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
How is the museum doing right now?
We're doing well. We're doing well. People are starting to come back out, of course, and I think and hope and pray that we're starting to see the backside of this pandemic as we get more people vaccinated, and people are starting to come out. And we put in all the necessary safety protocols here, and we'll maintain those for the foreseeable near future. But people are coming out and enjoying the museum, and I think all of the recognition that the museum has been getting over the last year plus, people are really responding, and it's piqued their interest in wanting to learn more about this history. And I do think that realm of social upheaval that we saw in this country last year with the George Floyd murder also turned a lot of people toward the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And TJ, I was really proud of the fact that people started to readily identify what we had set out to do from the onset, that this museum is a social justice museum. It is a civil rights museum. It is just seen through the lens of baseball. But more importantly, it is triumph over that adversity. And so when we did the Tip Your Cap celebration, I think people responded so because we needed something that we could all rally around. And to me, the story of the Negro Leagues embodies the American spirit, unlike any story in the annals of American history. It is everything we pride ourselves about being American. And so as a result, people embraced that because we really needed something that we could believe in and feel good about at such a tumultuous time. You know, we were dealing with a pandemic. And then all of a sudden, as if that wasn't enough, we were dealing with a level of social upheaval that was reminiscent of the 1960s. And so Tip Your Cap came along at just the right time and gave us something that we could rally around. And for me, if the winning spirit of the Negro Leagues can help us bridge the racial divide that has seemingly grown in our country, that makes it even more special.
Amen. Well, thank you for that. Your interview with Harold Reynolds that they did on the Negro Leagues was it's very rare that somebody's storytelling will get the reporter to break down, and Harold Reynolds, you couldn't even talk.
Yeah, that was emotional for both of us because it caught me a little off guard as I was telling the Buck O'Neill story. And Harold knew Buck. He knew Buck extremely well. And what he believed to be an injustice of Buck missing getting in the Hall of Fame by one vote. And I started to talk about the great character in which Buck displayed in not being upset about missing what everybody thought he was supposed to get. And it struck a chord with Harold, and it became very emotional that day as we were recording it, and the people just kept the camera running. And so both of us, I got through it, but I was on the verge of tears.
It is one of the best. I put a link to it. It is 5 minutes that is really well spent. I shared it with our team here in my office because that message that you're going to get further in this life with love than hate. If we all rolled out of our beds in the morning and that was our motto, this country would have no problems.
Absolutely. Well, I tell people all the time, we need more Buck O'Neill in this country. We
Amen.
really do.
Well, I want you to know that the Salem Chamber of Commerce has got a financial donation that we want to make to your organization in appreciation of you being here and in appreciation of what that organization means. We always say that the Chamber of Commerce, we don't care about the color of your skin, your gender, your sexual orientation, which college football team you root for. We're here about commerce, and the Negro League embodies that. There's a whole bunch of people who missed out on making a lot of money by not integrating baseball sooner. And this country and those business people would have been a lot better off if they had opened up their hearts and their minds. And so we want to make sure that you knew that check was going to be sent to you. You have donated a jersey to the Salem Chamber, and we're going to be drawing a name and letting one of the participants in today's forum know that they are getting a jersey from you. I've got like another hour of questions for you, but I'm going to wait till I come to Kansas City.
And TJ, whoever wins, just let me know what size we need to send, and we'll get it out to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Bob. We really appreciate having you. This has been one of the most inspirational forums that we could have. What a great way to end this season. And it's It's right that we've got Kathy on the line, because Kathy has been our president of our organization. She was on vacation. I wasn't sure she was going to be back in terms of today, but she is an inspirational leader, and she's somebody who puts her heart and soul into everything. And she's been an awesome leader of this organization. And so it is our great honor that we get to recognize you, Kathy. Thank you for this last year. Thank you for everything that you've done. You're running through the finish line like you should. So we appreciate that. Thank you, Sherman Johnnie and Hoyt. Mark, thanks to your organization for stepping up and sponsoring this event, and for being here to welcome Bob. I just also want to make sure that we recognize the Stichas again. We're looking forward to delivering all the messages to them, along with some video of today, so they get to see and understand the recognition that was meant for them. Coming up, May 18th, Chamber Businesswomen event, noon to 1 via Zoom, featuring motivational coach Allie Davidson. Sign up at salemchamber.org. Seat Tech is hosting a virtual hiring fair on May 20th and 21st. InspireSalem.org for more details. Our 2021-2022 Forum Speaker Series is slated to begin in September. Everybody cross your fingers. We are going to be in person in September. And special recognition again to Kathy Gordon as our Salem Chamber president. She's done a great job this year. Bob, it's always good to see you. We look forward to catching you on Black Diamonds. And with that, our meeting today is adjourned.
Bye, everybody. Thank you again for having me. Tom, thank you.